From New York, New York, you are listening to Extra Time, driven by Continental from actually Vacaville, California. I'm Andrew Wiebe with my partners in soccer, Chuck D, Charlie Davies, David Goss. Guys, what's up? We got Steve Zakuani with us today. Can't recommend hitting his Twitter, watching the video he posted, the athletic he did with Vince, also incredible. But let's start here. Before we get into the issues of the day and really dig in. Give me some positive weekend vibes. Charlie, I know you and the boys out here kicking it, doing your thing. Help fill me up a little bit before we dig into things, all right? What do you got for me?
Scooters, baseball. We're playing 2v2 soccer. We go to the beach, flipping rocks, finding shells, crabs, barbecues. You name it, we're doing it here. Ooh. And it's just I get to relive my childhood again with these guys. It doesn't get better.
Who's the fourth in 2v2 soccer? Is it your wife?
Yeah, that's the other question I had.
Yeah, too. It's the wife.
What's the? Do you guys keep standing? Yeah. Is there a record out there?
Nina gets like a little physical with them too. Like she pushes them. She might push them more than I do.
Someone has to, Charlie. Yeah. Everyone knows you're soft.
Until I
My dad always said. He always said, you never played daddy ball with your brother, ever. I was like, 6 years older. I was just packing it. And in basketball, like, you're not getting a shot off. I guess Nina's picking that up, too. We're doing the same thing here before we get to you, Dave. I got one of the big bubble makers and a bunch of squirt guns. So I'm making big bubbles in the backyard, and then we're running around shooting them with the squirt guns, which, again, I'm reliving my childhood. I'm buying every Matchbox car I see because I lost all of mine when I was in 6th grade. So my kid, Cameron, he's just being spoiled right now, enjoying his grandparents, his papa and his gung-gung, while I am, rage scrolling through Twitter half the day. But right now I'm with you guys. Dave, what are you up to, man? What was your weekend like?
It's hard. I don't have kids, so I wake up whenever I want. I start drinking whenever I want. I drink whatever I want. I eat whatever I want. So it's really tough. Yeah, really it was a good weekend. I'm getting a little exercise in. Did 9 miles of marching on Saturday with a number of different organizations across New York City. Got across the Brooklyn Bridge multiple times because you end up in like pickup protests and marches that you didn't know were coming, and why not be a part of it? And I also am growing scallions. So if you have scallions, you cut them off at the white part, put a little water in, and then boom. I mean, this is all I basically eat each time. This is like a week. So this is good stuff.
Everybody knows how to grow scallions now. It's that and banana bread. I've made like 5 loaves of banana bread.
Oh, that sounds so good. That sounds so good.
It's amazing. It's amazing. We hope you had a great weekend as well out there. Of course, we got a lot to talk about today. A little bit of a programming alert for you right here. If and when we get details about Return to Play, the tournament that is reported, rumored, going to happen in Orlando, we will put out an emergency pod. So if that happens, I don't know, tomorrow or Wednesday or Friday or a day that we don't record, we will jump in the studio and make sure you are up to date as soon as that happens. We also asked, or Dave did, for feedback on recent shows. This is just a reminder that you can literally ask us to talk about anything at all in the world. It does not matter. It does not have to be soccer. It could be soccer. We prefer that sometimes. 401-206-0MLS, extra time at MLSsoccer.com. We did get a little follow-up on the ABCs of Extra Time. We didn't have an H and we didn't have an I, and it turns out H was really easy. Cameron Crump said H is obviously for hummus. Also, we had somebody jump in and say H was for hot boy Kevin Molino. Either of those work.
C could also be hummus if you go full accent.
Yeah, I tried to get. I went a little bit between where you would go and where I would go, and so I was kind of an in-betweener there. We didn't have I, and I think I could be inverted winger if Bobby was still on this show. Instant replay also has a shout there.
Inverted winger is Bobby's inverted winger. Doyle is target winger. Doyle loved his target wingers in the 2013 SKC. Oh, God.
Actually, it was 2011 when that started, but I don't want to, correct you on this show here. We did have some feedback on what we talked about and what we have been talking about, which is, of course, I'll say it again, Black Lives Matter, the fight for racial justice, equality, change. And we will talk about that with Steve Zakuani in a little bit. Our text line got this text. Love the show, guys. Longtime listener, first-time texter. Please keep the Monday pod soccer specific. We got an email that said, hoping the next pod sticks to soccer. Many of us want to focus on positive stories and soccer in these tough times. Politics, current events can get super overwhelming and are being played 24/7. That's for a reason. I would argue that we are focusing on positive stories, which is the demand for change. So that's just my point of view. Alistair Brewer jumped in here. He said, your podcasts on race and racism have been great. I appreciate you taking a stand and not shying away from the discussion. And we appreciate you, Alistair. He's in our email all the time. We got a ton of comments saying they love the CJ Sapong interview. I think the best comment was calling him a soccer philosopher, which I thought was pretty damn apt. So we're going to keep doing what we're doing. You get at us, let us know, text line, email, whatever, Twitter at Extra Time. We read it all. We think about it all. And you should be thinking about these things as well before we get to Steve. Jeremy Abobasi and Charlie, they chatted on Instagram. Oh, sorry, Dave. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say we've gotten some messaging about people around the league who have said they'd actually like some help on organizations in their local markets, what's going on. What we're lucky about is we have fans from all over Canada and the US. So if you have things that you think should be supported, send them to us. We're going to try and put it all together. We mentioned we're going to try and highlight some, organizations that are doing good work once a month. We've sent some money. We're going to send some again. Fortunately, Steve Zakuani also has a foundation we'll talk to him about, but send us anything you have. We look through everything. So send us anything you have so we can help other fans feel like they can help make a difference.
Yeah. By the way, if you have something to match donations, I will smash the retweet button on any and all of that. So add us. Let us be a megaphone for you to push this out to a larger audience. Charlie, tell me about this chat with Jeremy Abobasi. What should people take away from it? What did you take away from it?
It was very impactful. Just his views on how to make changes to the system, racism he's dealt with and seen, and then just getting back on the field. What a joy it is for him to be out there, be free, set his mind free from the daily reminders of racism and oppression in this country. So I have a tremendous amount of respect for Jeremy Abobasi and what he's trying to do outside of playing the game, off the pitch. He's just one of those players who's got a great mind, a great attitude, and he's got a fan for life in me.
Also a future star too. He's a current star, man. He double digits last year for the Timbers. Can't wait to see him express himself, not just as he's doing now, but also on the field. Mark Anthony K, he's doing it too. He was out marching in LA. He has a nice piece at LAFC. Go check that out. I thought the Clyde Sims Instagram post, and if you don't remember Clyde Sims, then you're not an MLS old head. Clyde Sims 19. I mean, just a heartbreaking account of life as a black man in America. Go read that, and after you read that, ask yourself, who deserves that? Who should have to live that way? Who should be treated that way? And I'm pretty sure that your conclusion will be nobody. And I hope that helps change your mind if you're sort of on the fence right now. The call-up also had Ja'Cory Hayes and Mason Toye last week, so that's a good one to go check out. And by the way, I think on the show we said we were going to give $350 to the Sacred Seeds, which is CJ Sapong's foundation to help alleviate food deserts in Philadelphia. And if you don't know what that is, that's basically a neighborhood that doesn't have access to the produce, the healthy food, just food in general that they need.
Which needs to be understood is a massive issue in the United States. Low-income neighborhoods that are not serviced across the board in a lot of ways are not given options to buy fresh food. And you look at the amount of chain restaurants that are in or fast food restaurants that are in those neighborhoods, and then you look at just from a pure health point of view, the diabetes issues across those neighborhoods, and you see in COVID-19 how much it has negatively affected a lot of black neighborhoods in the United States to a disproportionate extent. This is a huge issue. If you don't have money to give, go learn about it, because learning about it can help you try and change it in the future. And I love that that's what CJ is doing.
We had 350. Well, we talked to the call-up. We talked to our producers. And this is just us. This is just the hosts and producers of Extra Time the Call-Up. We got $720 collected right now for the Sacred Seeds that we'll send over there today. If you want to donate, the link is on our Twitter at Extra Time.
I think you need to check that number again.
Oh yeah, what should we?
Got a little parachute payment from the.
Oh yeah, got a little parachute payment coming in here.
Show over there.
I think you better check that number.
All right, I'll go check my Venmo. We'll push this out later. Let you know what we ended up at next month. We'll do it again. So if you have an organization that you want us to spotlight, and of course you mentioned it, Dave, we'll talk to Steve Zakuani and talk about his. Let us know. We would love to be a part of this. We are doing inventory ourselves and saying, how can we actually do something? How can we not just talk about change on this show? How can we be a part of it? And this is one small way that we've decided to do that. Before we get to sort of the news of the day here and Steve Zakuani, this is news we got to tell you. The LA Galaxy have mutually agreed to part ways with Alexander Katai, and I'm sure you've seen this story if you're listening to this podcast. Katai's wife posted some mean, frankly, horrific things about protesters on her social media pages. And the club and Qatar came to a mutual agreement. He will not stay with the LA Galaxy. FC Dallas midfielder Jesse Gonzalez, he was also suspended by Major League Soccer following a report made to the Frisco Police Department alleging incidents of domestic abuse. So MLS is doing an independent investigation right now, but he is suspended as he goes through the behavior program for Major League Soccer.
It's been a while since we've watched specific soccer, but Jesse Gonzalez, the goalkeeper. So there's not a second Jesse Gonzalez that you need to worry about. That he's not a midfielder.
Correct. Yep. All right, let's bring him on now. Steve Zakuani, a resume that goes on and on and on and on. Steve, we'll go with just former Sounders player, but we'll get into everything else you're doing. How you doing, man? How you feeling?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. Good to see you guys, and I'm happy to be on.
So your video that you shared on your Instagram, which everybody should go watch, as well as the piece that you did with The Athletic, both powerful, both eye-opening from certainly my perspective, and I think anybody who takes the time to engage and think about those things. And the way we've been doing this is we're just going to walk out of here and let you have the floor to start and tell you what you're thinking, what you think needs to be shared in this time. How you feeling, man?
Yeah, I feel good for the most part, hopeful, optimistic because of the conversations happening, not just here locally where I am or in the United States, but over the whole world. You're seeing protests. I saw videos today from a protest in Rome for Black Lives Matter, which I never would have guessed would have happened just a few years ago. So I think the conversations that are being had are good, but at the same time, I'm hoping that it leads to meaningful change because this has happened before. I'm from the United Kingdom. I grew up in England pretty much my whole life. And these issues that face Black Americans here, they face Black British people as well. From the over-policing, the lack of opportunities in terms of certain jobs, lack of opportunities into elite education. It's even existing sport. You see it with Premier League footballers who are still being racially abused. So your class and status doesn't really exempt you from that. And I think the convos to be had have to address that is very, very real systemic racism. And we can't just have the convos now because it's in the media, because every brand wants to talk about it. We have to be prepared to have extremely uncomfortable conversations for a very, very long time that ultimately lead to real change and opportunities for all people.
Steve, you talked about the oppression, the racism in England. When you moved over to the States, did you experience the same thing? Was it more? Was it less? And how did you cope with racism when you were faced with it?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think in the States, the difference with English people, they're very covert with it. And I say English people, I don't want to generalize. I mean, the system over there is very covert. You have to really live there and feel it. It was much more overt in the United States. One of the first times I experienced like an outward act of prejudice was my first time ever in Miami, 2005, 17 years old. I came over with a club team from London, and a friend of mine had just passed away in London. He'd been stabbed, and we made T-shirts to commemorate his death. And I wore the T-shirt under my game jersey, saying that if I score, I'm going to lift up my jersey, point his face to the sky and celebrate. There's no TV, no cameras there. We're in the park. I'm doing it for my friend. Scored, lifted up the shirt, jogging back to the halfway line. The referee jogs alongside me and says, "Is that a photo of you when you were in jail?" And that's the first thing he said. And so I froze and didn't know what to do. But then the whistle blew, we played the game. No time to process the trauma that comes with that. You have to keep playing on. So small acts like that have happened, the monkey charts and things like that. The N-word, of course. So you experience those. And I think I was surprised just how overt it was here. And in getting to know African-Americans over the last 13 years being in this country, some of the things they've experienced in different places they've come from, it's shocking. It's really, really shocking. I think in the UK, it's very hidden. It's steeped in the history of the British Empire, but you don't overtly see it all the time, whereas here it's much more overt.
We're talking about the bigger issues and around the world, but in this scenario, in a soccer sense, because we've been talking a lot about it today before we got on the show, the responsibility and maybe what you'd want to see from white teammates, white fans, coaching staffs in scenarios like this. And obviously you're not speaking for everyone, but in your experience, what are maybe some directives you'd like to see from people when there is racism in the stands, when it's heard from one fan as you're walking past to get on the bus? What is it, the experiences that you would want to have felt or seen or support?
Yeah, I think when you can identify and isolate individual fans making prejudiced, racist remarks, you're talking about things like lifetime bans, etc. That's fine. But I think from a structural perspective, you're looking at even the global European body, UEFA, their history on dealing with racism is abysmal, absolutely abysmal. They give petty fines. They might make you play behind closed doors. They don't actually deal with what's going on, but they do campaigns called Kick Racism Out of Football, and they put a bunch of money into grassroots initiatives, they say, but they don't actually deal with the real issues. And I say now the onus shouldn't be on any black players to speak up, any black players to lead any charges, any marches. Kaepernick tried it. They didn't like him. He was divisive. They ostracized him. He needs to get out of here. He's an SOB. So we've tried that. We've tried that for 60, 70, 80 years now. So I think what you need now is the people in power, holding the power to make real meaningful changes. Personally, when I saw a lot of the PR posts, it was fine, but where were you 4 years ago? Would you have said that 6 months ago? That's what troubles me. And it's a very easy time to speak up right now. And we need people that are going to still be speaking up in uncomfortable times. So you can change, especially in this country with soccer, just access to the sport. A lot of poor black kids in certain communities can't afford to play soccer. They just simply can't play. And we don't know how good they're going to be. So dealing with that at that level, the access, and then supporting your black players when they bring to you that they're experiencing racism, which isn't a football issue, but it's a societal issue, and being there vocally, monetarily putting funds in the communities where you are. There's poor communities in pretty much every major city in this country where a lot of the MLS teams are. So I think things from that perspective you can do to initiate long-term change, set like a 10-year goal, not overnight changes. I think that's when I'll start to maybe have a little bit of hope that we're headed in the right direction.
Steve, I keep thinking about, and I think a lot in terms about certainly myself, but also my sons, because it'll be my responsibility to make sure that they're the ones that carry this legacy and a lifetime of work.
Yeah.
Where does the accountability come from in what you're talking about here? How can we make sure it isn't PR? How can we make sure it isn't, and I'll just throw in my case, postings on social media? Where does that accountability come from? What are the signposts that we should be looking at and saying, okay, we've gotten here. Okay, here's the next one. Here's the next one.
Yeah,
here's the next
I think the crazy thing about it is these protests, these marches, they're centered around police brutality, which is great. That is one symptom of structural racism. So if we have to do this every time for education, then we've got to do the next one for banking. Then the next week we're going to come and do it for sports. And it's crazy. So I think the two countries I've lived in most of my life is the United States and the United Kingdom. I think both countries have to come to terms with their past and really confront it and be honest about it. You have people in England who are still in denial. Just yesterday in a city called Bristol, they toppled a statue of a slave owner who killed 19,000 African men, women, and children, threw thousands more into the sea. And just yesterday, the people toppled his statue down. And there are politicians in England who are complaining that that's not the right way. Well, the history of that is that people have petitioned to get it down. People have signed things. People have tried to bring it up. And it's always been dismissed. So the people took it into their hands, brought down a slave owner statue. And I question why any US city, why any British city would be proud to have a man who owned other humans based on the color of their skins in a statue. In a museum, no problem. Publicly displayed where we have to walk past it every single day, that's an issue. So I think these two major countries have to come to terms with it. When I think of looting, for example, I think that in the British Museum, there are artifacts, artwork, gold, minerals, resources that are from Egypt, from Nigeria, from the Congo. Why are they in Britain? I don't know. So looting isn't taking a TV from Walmart for me. That's a small time looting, but big looting is when an empire goes to a continent and takes everything you have, leaves you impoverished, and you're still struggling to this day. But this is not taught. This is not spoken about in history whatsoever. The Tulsa massacre, which we call Black Wall Street, came up this week that 300, I think it was, African Americans were massacred. They were just business owners, and racists came into the town, bulldozed them, killed them. That's not taught here in school. I don't think many Americans know who Medgar Evers is. Medgar Evers fought alongside MLK and Malcolm X, but the difference was he actually served this country. He was a sergeant, he worked, he was a general, and he was murdered by a racist, taken to the hospital and denied entry because he was black with a gunshot wound, and he fought for this country. And only when they realized he was a sergeant in rank was he admitted into treatment and died 50 minutes later. So these are things that people still live with, the trauma, the history. How it's taught in England in schools, it's shocking because we think Black history began with slavery. There was civilizations before slavery. There was kings, there was queens, politicians. There's evidence that Black people in Africa were trading with China and Asian countries way before any Europeans ever invaded the African continent. So I think dealing with those head on, not hiding from it. This is our past. This is what we mean by structural racism, that when we passed laws that you could own land, own banks, go to certain schools, live in certain areas, we excluded Black people from that. Of course, they're going to be behind. Of course, we have to right this and understand that the system isn't actually broken. It's very successful because it's working as it was designed to work. And so we don't need to repair the system. You have to dismantle it, rebuild, so that hopefully your children, my children, can have a way better future.
And Steve, it's the same in the United States when you talk about the Confederate flag being hailed around in certain states in this country, whether they're hanging from a flagpole, whether someone's driving the car and has it proudly hanging in the back. Confederate soldiers who have statues in this country, and people are saying, this is history. We have to, what? No, this is not a history we celebrate. This is not a history we recognize. We don't forget it. It's never going to be forgotten, but this is not something you want to see. What advice would you give to the young Black kids that are playing soccer in this country that, now are seeing, maybe they haven't been exposed to it yet, but now are seeing the deeper problems within this country and now are going to be responsible for helping the next generation, their generation and the next?
Yeah, it's a really great question. What I would say, I think back to myself when I was growing up, and you would see small signs of racism or things would happen. And a lot of times you didn't want to be disruptive. You didn't want to be the loud Black guy. You roll with the punches until it got really, really bad. Then you could call it out. I would say to them, be proactive, man. Be loud, be bold, be proud of who you are. Get on with all your teammates, of course. But the second you experience any racism, any off-color jokes, whatever, call it out right away. You now have that power to do that. Society's attitudes seem to be shifting. People seem to be acknowledging that Black lives have been brutalized, marginalized, and therefore they should matter, and we should do things to remedy that. So for the young, and it's great that, especially what I like about this country is when I see like the US national team and I see yourself and I see Josie and I saw Eddie Johnson and Gooch, you do have role models to look up to who have made it and get there. So it's important to keep providing a pipeline where young Black African Americans can have aspirations of playing in Major League Soccer and not just think, NBA or NFL. So I think those things are important as well from just a representation standpoint. So it's important that the current generation continues to speak out, to be role models, to be visible, to spend time in those communities with those people. And it's important for the young kids to know that they can be Black, bold, proud, and continually call out the small instances of prejudice, but then also the bigger, larger structural prejudice as well.
And I would just add to that, for the white kids out there, not white, whatever it is, if you hear, you see, you're a part of, you should be standing right there. You should be calling that as well, too. That's our responsibility. We can't be quiet in these moments, and we have been for far too long. I mean, Steve, your grasp of history, I think, is impressive. And you were getting me riled up as you spoke about some of those things that we don't talk about, but I've read an awful lot about as well that aren't sort of ingrained in who we are. And we have to remember that is who we are. For people that are trying to educate themselves right now, and that's such a big part of this, what directions would you point them? What has impacted you? What has impacted people around you?
I would say for me personally, I find a lot of peace and understanding in reading. I try to read about 4 books every month, and one is always a history book. So I've read tons of books on history, and I've read Eastern history, Western history, all over. And this is why maybe I've been, and I'm sure Charlie can relate as well, the rage that a lot of people feel right now, we feel all the time. And it's just, you have to suppress it. You just suppress it so that you don't go crazy and you can actually function in society. But this isn't new. This isn't for us over the murder of George Floyd only. That was a tipping point. I think the manner of his murder is what set people off. It was so callous and so just, how could you kill a human being like that? So I think people should channel that rage into education. Education is the most powerful tool, and that means going and not just reading, like I said, but there's a ton of amazing documentaries on Netflix that show you how this system was built on the structural racism that exists within it. Conversations, and not just conversations with your Black friends. I mean, please, it's good to speak with your Black friends, but don't just call them all week because everybody's calling them and they're exhausted. So with your white friends, speak with them. And when you're at family dinners and you hear that off-color joke in that moment, those are the moments when it's important to stand up, because one joke then turns into another and then it turns into actual act. So I think things like that, but education is the key for me. Read up on the history, go back and read what you weren't taught in school. Read the speeches of Malcolm X, of Martin Luther King, what were they talking about? What was the end goal? What were they trying to get us to? Study those things. Study the historical history of things like COINTELPRO, which, you know, is something that deserves a much longer conversation, which is just the FBI and CIA and government agencies infiltrating Black organizations like Martin Luther King's and Malcolm X's because they wanted to prevent the rise of a Black Messiah. So they ultimately orchestrate assassination of these people, and you have to ask yourself why. Ask yourself why anytime this happens, people begin to cherry pick and parade MLK quotes as if he lived to age 85, died of natural causes, surrounded by his family, and wasn't actually murdered by a racist and didn't live to the age of 40. So the most non-violent, perfect guy who did all he's supposed to do didn't live to see 40. So that's trauma that I think Black people have to live with, understanding that you can be as good as MLK and still not make it. So education around these issues, self-education is important right now, reflection, less talking, more listening, I think is one of the keys here.
I'm interested because you talked about, you talked to everyone about these issues before this happened, before last week, but, there's been issues going on forever in circles in MLS where it's a lot of international people and there's racism all over the world, but it's different in different places. I wonder what the conversation's like with Central Americans, South Americans, players from Africa, players from the Middle East, because you've played with all of them. Their conversations, if you had them in the locker room, about what they've lived through and what it's like in different places.
Yeah, it's crazy because I remember in 2011, this exact thing we're seeing now, it happened in North London, where I'm from, in my exact city, where an unarmed guy called Mark Duggan, who we knew growing up, or we knew of him, he was shot and killed by the police, and people rioted back then. And it was all over the news here as well a little bit. And I remember posting about it. And then I came into training and Osvaldo Alonso sat by me and had a conversation. This guy is from Cuba. I don't think he'd been to London. I don't think he has been to London at the time, but he was very curious in what was happening. So I think people can empathize with situations like that. And I think that's the beauty about football locker rooms, sports. It's so many cultures, so many people. And honestly, when I've been in there, fortunately, the groups I've been with, I've not experienced that racism within the group. I think everyone's just together. You're there for one cause. It's so beautiful. It's when you leave there that you get back into society, you're just like, it hits you right away. So fortunately for me in Major League Soccer, I don't think ever in any stadium I ever experienced that. Maybe fans would boo you. You think of a Seattle versus Timbers game and people go crazy, but it's all in good fun. It never ever got nasty. So I think the culture as a whole actually is pretty good in my personal experience that I had. And I think, but those convos do need to be had. I think every head coach will be remiss not to have some sort of forum with their players and let them speak up of what's going on. What people are feeling a lot of different things. They need to have outlets. They need to be able to communicate. And I hope now going forward that, diversity won't just be a buzzword. It will be something that people actually take seriously, understand the massive, severe implications it has. And who better to lead that charge than athletes, because they have such a visible platform in every community in this country. So I think that's a good place to start.
What do you think when MLS gets back on the field? And I think about Colin Kaepernick and the stand that he took and the symbolism that he was trying to communicate. I wonder how MLS athletes are going to attack this and approach this once they have that additional platform on the field doing their job. Maybe they score a goal. Maybe it's during the national anthem before. How do you think that will be handled when these games do get started going again?
Yeah, I do think.
How do you think athletes will approach it?
Yeah. I do think you'll see like celebrations after goals and stuff. The thing about MLS and the national anthem is the NFL does it on the sideline. Our ones, you're on the pitch. Like if you're going to take a knee on the pitch right before kickoff, it's a bit different in that sense, I think. So I always said even back then, because I'm not, I'm eligible for US citizenship, but I'm probably more English than I am American. So I would never have kneeled in the first place anyway, just for me, because as an outsider, I wouldn't have done that, although I completely support and agree with what Kaepernick did. But do I think we'll see players kneeling? I don't think so necessarily. I think you can. I don't think there should be a pressure on anybody to do so, because I think the message that Kaepernick was trying to get out there is now out there loud and clear. And I think the only thing we've all been wrong on in this is that I think we all felt that Kaepernick will be vindicated by history maybe in 30, 40, 50 years' time. It just took 4 years, which is kind of the most surprising thing about this. But I think the powerful, Black players in MLS and powerful white players in MLS and all players, I think, do have a responsibility to keep the conversation going. So whether that's I've seen a lot of people writing blog posts and different things. It's been fantastic. People have been posting videos. I'm sure those convos happening in locker rooms, whether that manifests in outward protesting, I'm not sure. Is it necessary? It's good. I don't think you have to at this point, as long as behind the scenes, you're working to change a lot of things.
Tell me about what you're doing, man. I know you don't want to toot your own horn, but Kingdom Hope's pretty cool. I mean, you've been doing this.
Yeah, for me, it was, I felt heavy, man. I felt heavy last week. I remember watching the video of George Floyd and stopping it probably 2 minutes in. Just like, I couldn't watch it. I couldn't watch another killing like that. And I've been wondering to myself, just why this one? Why did this one? And I think I go back to the manner of death. We've seen people being shot on camera, and it's sad and it's terrible, and there's no convictions, and we get really upset. I think seeing a 9-minute knee in the neck was such an apt metaphor for the experience of many Black Americans, Black British people, Black people all over the globe, of just having a system that constantly doesn't allow you to breathe ever. You have to police how you dress, police your hairstyle. You have to police the music you listen to. You have to always police yourself, make hundreds of little decisions every day that make you appear as a safe Black person who's not a threat. And it's very exhausting to live that way. So for us, I think I took a couple of days here just kind of processing that, feeling that. And then it was, okay, how can we make changes? And, a lot of poor communities, they've just been so ravaged, first by the COVID pandemic, which is, believe it or not, still happening. No one's talking about it right now. And then with what's happening now with the protests. So we got together pretty quickly, raised a ton of money. Sorry, guys.
Oh, good. You're back.
You're good.
So I think I lost you guys. Sorry.
Steve's getting phone calls.
A fund that is so I think I lost you guys there. Sorry, guys. We raised a fund that is going to give money to people that for rent assistance, groceries, bills, things like that. Just things that people basic needs. Because as people working at the high level with the mayor and police chief and trying to get police reform, I want to work on the ground level and work with people just to, what do you need right now? How can we meet your needs for the next month, the next 3 weeks? How can you get through that? So our fund's going to go directly to those needs. And I'm working with people who are pretty influential in the city as well to try and actually get structural changes in a lot of these like tech companies and sports companies as well.
Well done, man.
Yeah.
I know Kingdom Home. We just had CJ on the last pod, and he's got the Sacred Seeds, and we got some money together for him. We're trying to figure out something to support every single month in underprivileged communities.
Man, I can't hear you for some
Tell
reason.
people about. Can you hear me? We'll edit this. You back? Steve.
If there's one person you don't want to have to hear, it's Weebs. So that's okay.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Anything? Nothing?
Tell him to unplug.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you got us back?
You got us?
You good?
You hear us? Oh, no. He's going to unplug and start over.
Okay. We'll just get the last one.
Okay.
I want him to promote his Kingdom Home.
Do you hear us?
Perfect. I can hear you now. Yeah, I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So we'll just edit all that out, Steve. I want you to tell people about Kingdom Home. So I'll ask you a question on that.
Okay.
And we'll end on that, okay?
Okay, perfect.
All right, Steve, let's end here, man. And this has been every single one of the conversations we've had on this show in the last couple of weeks has been incredible and eye-opening, and just kind of drives home the point that we should have been having them in this sphere before. But I want to ask you about Kingdom Home, because CJ Sapong was on this show last week talking about the Sacred Seeds and the work he does in Philly with food deserts and communities that are underserved in that sense. I know you've been doing the same thing in Seattle when it comes to getting kids into the game. So tell me about what Kingdom Home is doing and how people can help.
Yeah, no, so this is our 10th year. We've been working, I like to work at the very, very grassroots level and work in areas of like access to sports. So first it began just doing like soccer clinics in underserved neighborhoods and camps and things of that nature. And it's evolved then to helping kids afford to play club soccer and things like that. Things that, will keep poor kids out, poor kids from all backgrounds and communities out. So we've tried to work and rectify that for a very long time. And then a lot of things also not involved in soccer, trying to help people from poor backgrounds afford college tuition, for example, and some of the costs associated with that. So we primarily focus in soccer and in education, and trying to be the middleman who is funding and helping fund a lot of the costs that people just would not be able to afford. So we work in that sense. Right now, it's just more about meeting the immediate needs of people in those communities. So rent assistance, bills, groceries, things that people think about on a daily basis that we may not have to, and it's like, what can we do right now to alleviate some of the burdens? And so we raise quite a bit of money towards that, and it's going to go directly back into the communities to make sure that people have relief for the next 2, 3, 4 months at least.
If somebody wants to help. How can they help?
Tweet me. I'm on Twitter. Tweet me. So
Okay.
they can find me on social media. You can go to kingdomhope.org. Always love when people want to come and help us. So yeah, I'm not hard to find. I'm here.
Thank you, Steve. If you listen to this interview, the things here he's talking about history-wise, all that takes is Google, people. Go Google it. Go educate yourself. It's a small step to take. Steve Zakuani, a man of many talents. Steve, thanks so much for joining us.
What a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Oh, Steve Zakuani had me wanting to fist pump that entire time. I think maybe the most important thing of many important things he said that's truly actionable is the education side. Go educate yourself. Understand where these systems come from, how they're still deeply embedded in our communities today. I mean, it's tentacles. They are literally going everywhere. And his Kingdom Home Foundation, I think, is a really, really awesome thing that we should think about for July as far as our effort to support people and organizations out there. So put that in the back of your mind. My vote right now goes to Kingdom Home, but that's just me. Add extra time at MLSsoccer.com. Let's talk some soccer. Let's talk the Philadelphia Union. Kevin Durant coming in here, according to the Sports Business Journal, buying a little stake in the Union. Apparently, he couldn't get a deal done with DC United. Pablo Maurer at The Athletic had all the reporting on that one, in addition to Steve Goff. That was his hometown club, but got it done down the road with Philly. What do you guys think? He's a big YSC guy, a big, developmental pathway guy, right? Yeah, he's all about that.
I can see that. I can see that.
He's got his burner locked and loaded for those Union games, just to complain about video review. What do you think about this? I mean, this is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I think to me, it's bigger than James Harden, and I thought that was pretty sweet as well, because James is doing it in his kind of adopted hometown.
I'm with you. I think it's cool. It's a big step in I guess in Philadelphia Union's direction to finally get someone who's got a voice in that community, right? Like, you're talking about one of the best basketball players in the world, now a part of your organization. And when you're talking about Chester and the demographic that makes up Chester, you're making a reach. Now people are going to listen in that community. And I think it's a smart move on both sides.
I wonder if it's a shot across the bow, Eastern Conference rival Joel Embiid, who is a Union fan, doesn't have that ownership stake, though. Now Kevin Durant gets his own suite whenever he shows up, which is
what would you want? What do you want from your celebrity owner, Charlie? Like, if you're a player in the locker room, what do you want from a celebrity owner? You're like, oh, okay, we got James Harden now, or here comes Matthew McConaughey, or here's Will Ferrell. Like, as a player, what are you thinking when you see something like that?
Cool, only if it's going to benefit me. So what are the perks of having a cool owner? Are you getting hooked up with tickets to concerts, other professional games, courtside, first baseline, suites, all those things, going to events. When you see the LAFC players, they're out in movie premieres, right? So you're seeing LAFC players out at movie premieres, out at LA Lakers games, courtside. That's what a cool owner brings to the table, because now players are like, hey, look at all the guys on this team getting these cool opportunities to do things off the pitch. That's what I want. I want to play for a club like that. That's what an owner can do for an organization.
But they have to be engaged. They have to be involved at some point, right? You got to at least know they watch the game. Mm-hmm. We've heard about some celebrity owners in MLS and other places where, they show up when a team makes a championship and you haven't seen them in 4 years, and the players don't feel like it's a part of what they're doing. But I think it's cool. I also think one of the things that's cool is, and in line with what we've been talking about all of today and over the last week, is just to have Black ownership in the room, leadership in the league, especially for Kevin Durant, who is an athlete, to understand the athlete's perspective and have someone in the room to have those conversations to say, this is how you respect what athletes do. Obviously, we saw negotiations over the last 6 months, between the players union and owners in Major League Soccer. Yeah, Kevin Durant's only 5% right now, but at least you have someone who has the other side perspective to sort of be in the room and be a part of it. I do wish he played for the Knicks, but, Weeby clearly is Brooklyn till he dies over there in Vacaville, California with his hat on.
But hey, man, you got to wear what you got.
Another cool thing when I think of owners that are actually taking the initiative to learn the game and maybe didn't know the game before, is when Benny Philhaber is talking about Will Ferrell. And Will Ferrell in the beginning saying, you know, hey, how you guys doing? You probably think this guy isn't going to know who I am or what I do or what position I play. And he says, you know, 6 months down the line, Will Ferrell is having a conversation after a game saying, man, we really got after them. We pressed them and they tried to counter press, but we used the width and then we were able to counter. And when we got in front of the box, we were deadly. We were finishing all our chances. And you're like, wait, was that the soccer education, the game you just got in 6 months? And now he's all in it and thinks like he can have a meaningful conversation with a current player. That's an ownership. That's cool. That's what you want. Now I'm waiting for an LFC player to end up in a Will Ferrell movie. And then now we're talking.
I can picture Bob Bradley has no filter on it's Will Ferrell, it's whoever. He's like, this is how Barcelona plays. The thing is, when you move it into the six's feet, then you can space triangles. That's where you create the game. And Will Ferrell's like, well, I guess I'm going to learn this now.
Yeah. You have to.
I had dreams of Kevin Durant. I don't think he'll do it because he's not going to play the rest of the year. Being in Orlando with the Union whenever all this stuff happens, because that's apparently where the NBA is going to go as well, and like hobnobbing with his boys. You know, we didn't talk to you about this, Charlie. This Orlando tournament. Apparently, there's a $1 million prize, bonus money, and we're hearing as well. There's some reporting out there that Concacaf Champions League berth will go to the winner of it. So that adds some, I don't know how everybody else feels, but to me, that's like ultimate cachet. When you heard about this Orlando possibility, how this might go down, what do you think? Do you like the idea? How would you personally be preparing for something like this? Like, how are these teams going to go into it? How are they going to prepare?
Initially, I'm not going to lie. When you're telling me I'm going to go down 2 months to Orlando on lockdown, not leave my room, go straight from the room to the training field and the pitch and still be, practicing social distance protocols and not have access to my family, you think I was going to like that? No chance. And I understand across the board all the players' frustration saying, how can I not be allowed to see my family, to see my kids, my wife? Maybe my wife's pregnant or I'm expecting my first child. You think I'm not going to be a part of that process? And you're going to pull me away from my family for that amount of time? No way. Now we're talking about just a month. And it's like there's a clear plan style, tournament style. I'd be pumped for that. You're talking just a month of going down there to play with all this frustration, with all the problems going around in our world, in our country. Yeah, get me to this tournament. Let me play. And what, I don't know how many games are going to be played, but if I'm going to get a couple of games to play, I'm going to go all in to win. I'm not distracted. My distraction is the game, and I can focus in on the game because that's going to distract me from everything else. So if I'm a player, in my experience, and me personally going to a tournament, I can get everything out, put that outside of my out of my mind, and focus on the game and give 100% to it, and love the fact that I don't have to deal with anything else. I can just deal with the game. So I'm excited to watch this. I think everyone in this country is excited to watch these players play. And the players who are playing, you're playing to win. You're playing for sponsorship dollars in the future. You're playing for jobs in the future, opportunity. No one's coming there to play 50%, 75%. If you're going to play, you're going to win. And I think that's you're going to see when it might be even more heated. There might be even more running, more altercations, because everyone's dealing with the same issue. And that's like blocking the outer world out, the nonsense, the social media, and focus on playing. And when you're talking about releasing stress and pressure and anxiety, you're going to talk about a competition with a ton of passion. And I cannot wait to watch it.
Charlie, we talked about this a little last Thursday, but you'd know better. I mentioned it, but for like a veteran player who knows how to manage their body and really training, they've been there before, to have just games after games, especially a striker. Like if you come into this thing and you get hot, if you hit the back of the net the first or second
let's say this is 2014 MLS Cup playoffs,
right.
Charlie Davies.
This is your dream scenario though, where you're basically just playing games. You're a month where you're locked in playing games, and for a lot of veterans, you just want to wait for the
dream scenario. Dream. It's great because you play the game, recovery training the next day, maybe a day off, then an easy training, preparation training, and then it's game time again. I thrived in that type of schedule for matches. So I know the older players, give it to me. But Orlando Heat is no joke too.
Yeah, that's true.
When you throw in that humidity in the heat, it's no joke. It's going to actually be two or 3 days of recovery, and then you're good to go. But I'm excited for the older players in this tournament. This is where they can really show, hey, it's not about giving it all in the in between the matches. Count on me for game time. I'm gonna show up.
Who has the advantage, like team-wise? If you were looking around the league and trying to look for attributes that would give a team an advantage in sort of this almost like a March Madness-esque setup or a World Cup setup, presumably, because a month is, I mean, you only have a certain amount of time to figure out the format for something like that. Who has an advantage? Is it the teams that have been together? Because my head goes to, okay, not everybody's been training at the same level. Not everybody's been together. They've been small groups. Some are now getting into full trainings. But it's the teams that sort of intimately know what they want to do and knew it before they were on the field, and certainly there'll be some rust that I think will have the better chance. It's not the teams that have like rebuilt this offseason. That seems like a step too far to me.
Yeah, it is. It's all about the chemistry, cohesion, understanding of where guys need to be, how they're playing, the identity. If everyone in the squad knows this is how we play, no matter who's in the position, this is how we play, this is how we score goals, this is where we're good, this is where we're weak, let's play to our strengths. If that is all boiled down, that team is going to stand the best chance to win in this tournament. It's not the guys that are newly formed and we're still trying to figure things out. You know, we only played 2 games and we still don't know who's playing what position and who's best in what position. It's the teams that are already have a set squad, a set philosophy, and a coach that's a leader.
You also have to think about some teams really, a lot of what they do either relies on a home environment or the energy around them. And so I think about teams that want to get the pace up and want to play high press or anything like that. It's going to be hard, not just the Heat in Orlando, but the environment that you're in. You know, it's not like you come out first 5 minutes, you press them into mistake, the crowd gets on them, and all of a sudden you're running downhill. It's going to be a little bit different. So that's something to think about. You've seen it up and down, I think, in the Bundesliga of some teams that, you know, like Dortmund has still gotten the games open. They've still created a ton of opportunities. But at the flip side, Leipzig has struggled. And that's a team that relies so much on that pressure and on those moments. So I think every team's going to be different, obviously.
So you're throwing something about so you're throwing subliminal messages out here that Atlanta ain't going to be that strong.
Ooh,
that's what you're throwing out there. You're throwing out Atlanta without that crowd.
They don't got Joseph.
It's not the same Atlanta.
Yeah,
boy, you also
that's the other thing. So I would have said off the bat, I'm not looking at anything. Seattle and Toronto have the advantage. They've played in playoffs. They understand their jobs. They have veteran players. They've got killer goal scorers, all that stuff. But then you've got Nico Lodero, who we don't know where he's at, and you've got Bradley, where we don't know where he's at. And I think that changes it a little bit for those two teams. But for sure, Atlanta missing Joseph, that's basically everything.
Let us know what you think. I mean, you're looking at your own teams. You're thinking, how might they do in something like this? We want to know what you think in this sense. I want to know what you guys think. Once again, how many times do you think we've done the Mario Balotelli conversation? Probably like what we like a baker's dozen now,
yeah,
or like
his time. He's got to recognize Italy. Get out of Italy. And if you're talking about coming to a league where he can make a big impact, it's Major League Soccer. It's the United States. Come to MLS. People will embrace Mario Balotelli. I want to see him in MLS because he's got that swag, that confidence, and he's a quality player. The only pause for concern is how motivated will he be and how much of a problem will he be if, you know, apparently he's misunderstood, but if he's not all into it, if he's not he doesn't agree with the tactics or the coach or the philosophy, then it's a problem. But if you sit down and have a conversation with him before you obviously sign him and you understand where he's coming from and that you know how to get the most out of him and how he tells you how I thrive, where I'm the best at, sign him. It's a no-brainer.
I completely agree with you, Charlie. Right now, for those of you who aren't paying attention, it looks like his contract with Brescia is going to be terminated. He missed a bunch of training sessions around this pandemic. He's reportedly not showing up for Zoom calls.
Zoom
I can identify I avoid Zoom calls myself. But he had 5 goals in 19 league appearances. Brescia is going to get relegated. It's almost certain. And if and when they do, his contract would automatically terminate. So he would be on a free. I am 100% with you, Charlie. I'm Team Super Mario. I don't have to coach him. I don't have to pay him. I don't care. Figure it out. His talent is such. His ability to change the profile of your club is such that you take a risk and try to figure it out. And if you don't think you have that ability within your organization, don't do it. But there's got to be somebody out there that looks at their team, at their market, at their competitiveness and says, you know what? I think we actually have the pieces to do it. Let's try to figure out how to motivate him. Like you said, let's talk to him. What does he need? Let's listen to him, because I have a feeling that, maybe people haven't, or maybe he's abused some of that too. And see if you can get the guy on TAM. Mm-hmm. If Zlatan was willing to do it, try to get him on TAM with some sort of escalator where it's like, hey, Mario, if you score 15 goals, we will put you on a DP deal next year. And no, it won't be a long-term contract for him. I don't think at this point there's going to be many people that take that risk. But he has an opportunity, the same way Zlatan did, to come over here and make a different name for himself. Because every time you hear about him, you always hear the same old thing. And maybe they're cliches, maybe that's actually how he operates, but you always hear the misunderstood side of it. If anybody can understand him, I think it's Americans. Come over here, man. Try something different, express yourself, do the things that make you so special. And by the way, we like misunderstood people in the US. We identify with them. We do our best to understand them. There are parameters. Certainly there are sometimes limits, but I just think that this could be the opportunity, not just for him, but for some team that's brave enough to do it, to really sort of go into some uncharted territory and try to push themselves forward. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe he would come over here and it would blow up in our faces. But even if he did, oh my God, how it would be a massive story in itself.
Jersey sales through the roof.
Headlines. What do you think we'd be talking about on MLS? We don't have people making headlines with their personality. That's why Zlatan, both the on-field and off-field, was so special. Nothing, Dave? No opinion?
Yeah, I was waiting for him to come in.
I think you.
I know. I was like, I didn't know. I was, yeah.
You guys, I don't. Charlie doesn't know because he wasn't there, but I was doing this in 2014. I've been saying Mario Balotelli, no matter what, positive, negative, is a positive for Major League Soccer because, as you said, he brings eyeballs. He brings a different style, a different swagger, as Charlie said, and as you said, good or bad. I think when you say TAM, he needs to go to a team where he's not the leader. So he needs to go to a team that has a player who's on his level already. And there aren't a ton of those in Major League Soccer. So you need to find the right situation where he can be as talented as he is, but it's not like the whole team follows him each game. And so there's a few teams that go under those lists, the obvious ones, LAFC, the Galaxy, Seattle, Toronto. I don't know who else I'm missing here.
I mean, I look at the Galaxy for obvious reasons. They've handled this before. The media swarm around him won't be new or different. And he will ultimately be sort of a big fish in a big pond. He won't be the end all be all in LA. I think that might be good for him to sort of blend in a little bit, they want to cross the ball. Guillermo Barros-Schelotto just whipping that thing in 24/7. Stick Mario up there and let Chicharito just run off him. Why is Chicharito the target of all those things? Why is he taking on 2 center backs? Let Mario Balotelli do it. They've already done the TAM deal with Zlatan. They understand the parameters. If it's going to be any team that would take that chance, I would say Miami? We think we can handle this.
Miami? I think Miami has. I think Miami's its own sense of dangers, and it has some legitimacy.
Yeah.
Although I would like to see him come in with a Silva. I don't know that Rodolfo Pizarro is a personality in himself, and so that's big enough that Balotelli comes in and can follow and not have to be the leader. One interesting one would be, don't know if they do it, don't know what the money looks like, Montreal, to have him come in and play under Henry.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, and they need the position. You have a guy in Bojan who's played at the same levels and he can connect with. You have a guy in Tider who's played at a high level as well, so he doesn't have to carry the culture of the team.
Victor Wanyama.
Yeah, it could be interesting.
It could be interesting. That's a great take.
I'm
Thanks,
here for
Charlie.
it. However it happens.
I'm here for Charlie just
here
complimenting me.
Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. Before we get out of here, should we talk about the Hex? Because it kind of looks like it might be dead. I mean, it's been on Indoor Soccer over at Fox. ESPN FC is talking about it. It's being floated out here that it's looking like the World Cup qualifying format for CONCACAF for 2022 is going away from what we're accustomed to 3 groups of 4. And by the way, this is great news for Canada. 3 groups of 4 based off the current FIFA rankings. So the top 12 would go into this, and then there'd be a tournament outside for a playoff. So you'd have the group winners qualify for the World Cup, and then the top second place team would go play whoever it is outside the top 12 that won that tournament. This would give an opening to Canada. There's no doubt about that. So if you looked on the top 12, you have Mexico, USA, Costa Rica, Jamaica, Honduras, El Salvador, Canada, Curacao, Panama, Haiti, TNT, and then it's Antigua and Barbuda and Guatemala just behind in 13th. So they would probably be one of the favorites to get into that playoff. What do you guys think about this? I mean, there had to be some sort of change because international soccer, as much as club, if not more so, has been completely disrupted. If you're a Canadian fan, you got to be happy about the possibility of this.
Yeah, I would agree. I think one of the things that I don't like is I don't like when teams are pit against each other that don't play against each other. So when you talk about the best second place team, it's always bothered me. And you look at like youth World Cups and stuff like that, where it's like best third place team. You don't know which one's best because you're in different groups playing against different teams. It's going to be harder if you get drawn into a group with Mexico and Haiti than it is if you're drawn into a group with Antigua and us, you know? So that part,
yes,
I'm not a huge fan of.
Shade up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have to. As much as I love the U.S. national team and root for them, and I think positive things are coming, and I don't think this is bad for us, by the way. It takes away a little bit of leeway because it's just less games. But the U.S. is in a situation where you should be able to compete at the level you have to with whatever teams you're going to be in from a 12 group, whatever. But we all knew this was coming. This was going to be the last Hex anyway, which is sad because I love the Hex. I think it's one of the best things about CONCACAF. But World Cups are changing, the amount of teams in. Obviously, half of CONCACAF is hosting the next World Cup after this, so they qualify automatically. So it was going to be the last time. It's too bad.
Yeah, I'm with it. I like U.S. has got to win. Whatever they do, whoever they play, whatever the format is, they have to win. They have to get in the World Cup. So it doesn't matter really to me what it looks like. They got to take care of business. If anything, it gives them I would think a better chance to do it in this format. So
yeah, it'll be interesting. The one thing that's interesting is, so we've talked about this a little bit on the show, but I think Nations League's really helped a lot of the countries that draw a lot of players that are from the diaspora because they have more competitive games to have played. So I think teams like Jamaica and Haiti and Curacao are in a better place right now than what we've seen for a while. This scenario is less games. So it's like, I think it's really hard for a lot of these countries to get guys to come to games and to get people to, fly over. And sometimes the FAs aren't set up perfectly. So a guy like Leon Bailey is like, do I really want to put my body through this? Do I really want to go? We saw Kamar Lawrence's issues with the hotels and having to pay stuff yourself and all of that. So if you have less games, can you get your best team for more of them? And if so, I think you're looking at a few of these countries that it was a real outside shot at getting to the next World Cup start to come into play and have some legitimate opportunities. And I think Canada goes in that same boat of like, you're starting to get great players. And I think Jonathan David and Alphonso Davies and those guys were always going to come. But, now maybe this makes the conversation a little bit easier for some dual guys that you're in the competition for.
Yeah, and woe to whoever gets in that group with Canada because they wouldn't be the 1 seed. You want to avoid Canada as far as those 2 seeds goes. Well, I'd also be curious where they're going to play these games because that's a big part of the international issue right now is the logistics, the safety associated, the travel. How do you get all those people in one place when it's just a couple of games? Would it be a scenario almost like a World Cup scenario for CONCACAF where you're putting all these teams in the same place for these group stage games and just saying, hey, we're playing it out right here. It's a big TV event. I don't know how you would do it. I don't know when you could do it because the club seasons are all up in the air and all sort of the schedules are being pushed and changed and chopped and moved. But how would you do the travel? Who would host? Because as you said back in the MLS conversation, Dave, who hosts matters. I mean, it matters a lot. You look at the MLS, look at the U.S. national team record in CONCACAF versus on home soil and in specific countries, it fluctuates and changes. So a lot of details here. This is by no means confirmed. Nothing is done, but an interesting concept being floated out there. And I think it would be a good solution to what is a big problem right now in the international game.
If you got a club schedule, maybe it's just a situation where you draw the best soccer playing reporters from each country. You throw them in a tournament setup in San Pedro Sula, and it's just me sitting underneath Charlie, playing through balls, creating opportunities in the heat. I believe us, dude. I believe in us.
Now you're talking.
You're used to playing on the cow patch, huh?
Yeah.
I know he's gonna play me through.
Yeah. I'm Michael Bradley at this point, dude. I'm covering ground. You put me in a hot setting, tall grass. Look at this shape. I'm covering ground right now.
Yeah, I bet, man. I bet. I'll cheer you on from the sideline and ice my ankles while I watch you. Last thing before we get out of here, Jesse Marsch, shout out to him. Rocked the Black Lives Matter armband with Red Bull Salzburg. And by the way, they're on the pace to a double here. They won the cup in Austria, and they have I believe it's a 7-point lead right now in the championship stage of the Austrian Bundesliga. And then Bild came out, and look, you can say you trust Bild or you don't, but Bild said that Marsch would be an option should Borussia Dortmund part ways with their current head coach. He says, quote, I have a contract here and my focus is 100% here. It's not necessary to speak about it, and I have to say that I haven't been in contact with Dortmund, but oh my God, an American coach is being linked with Borussia Dortmund, and it's not complete fallacy. That's incredible.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
He has a huge reputation already in Europe for what he's done in such a short amount of time. That's great to hear. But just like many of these potential rumors, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be true, but the fact that you're just being connected to that club is major. It's major. It's great for American managers to say, hey, we can do that. We can follow the path that Jesse Marsch went down and possibly aspire to play, to coach and manage some of these Champions League level squads. So it's fantastic to see. And we've talked to Jesse on these platforms and what a great guy he is. And he's invested in trying to be the best coach he can be and pushing those limits and breaking down barriers, saying, hey, Americans not only can coach in Europe and learn the language, learn the culture, but have success. That's big time. And at the same time, still paying respect to what is happening in our country while he's overseas, saying, you know what, there are bigger things than the sport. And I'm going to show that even though I'm over here, I'm still thinking about everybody in our country and what our brothers are going through, right? And wearing that on his sleeve. So respect to Jesse Marsch for what he's continuing to do in Europe.
If he got it, there would be 3 head coaches that are American in the Bundesliga currently, which is mind-blowing. And I think Dortmund's the most entertaining team in the world. You could put Liverpool in there right now as well. So it'd be fun. It would just be, if you told me Jesse Marsch is going to go coach, one of the big teams, like, this is dessert as an American fan to just be able to tune in and watch him going nuts on the sideline while this team just pours it on. And you don't know what the group will look like because they're so young and they sell on and all that stuff. But he belongs in the conversation because he was an assistant at Leipzig, which is a top 3 team in the Bundesliga. Now he's about to win a double in Austria. He's won in the US. Like, his resume is what this Dortmund team looks for in the coaches that they want. And it's a credit to him that he set himself up in that way and he's taking the risks.
Also helps that he coached very successfully their prize striker too, in Erling Haaland. So he's shown he can develop. He did that at the Red Bull level. He's shown he can do it at the European level as well. Props to Jesse Marsch for everything he's doing, and we'll see what happens with.
And
his
I assume we'll get free
many more
tickets in the wall if he gets this job. So
exactly.
We got
you. That's what it's all about.
Question.
That's Charlie. Charlie's all about the celebrity owners. It's all about the concert tickets and the first base line. That was the most Boston thing ever. First base line. Oh, we have to go to Fenway. That's the number one thing that's happening.
Charlie's looking down at his feet and he's like, I don't see a red carpet down here. I should be standing on a red carpet right now. What's up, guys? What's up? Anyway, that's it for us today. Big thanks to Steve Zakuani for dropping some really powerful knowledge. Listen to what he says. Think about it. Go educate yourself. We'll continue these conversations on our platform here, 412-060 MLS, extra time at MLSsoccer.com.
And last thing to close out on, if anyone out there lives in the Vacaville area and wants to help donate some internet to Andrew, we'd love to take it. So let us know.
It's not working? It's been bad? It's been poor?
It looks really good if I was streaming a Bulgarian League soccer game in 1999 off of Big Soccer.
Perfect. That's exactly what I'm going for. Welcome to Bulgaria, folks. We're out of here. We'll see you Thursday. Have a great week.